We interrupt today's scheduled podcast to talk about what happened in Spain on the 28th of April, Spain's Blackout, the Apagón. Let's get into it.
Bienvenido al podcast de The Way. Si quieres aprender inglés y hablar con confianza, estás en el sitio correcto. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a mejorar su inglés y alcanzar sus objetivos. Visita nuestra web theway.es para conocer más sobre nuestros cursos online desde A2 hasta C1 y descubre cómo podemos ayudarte a avanzar en tu aprendizaje. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen Language Pair cómodamente desde casa.
So at about 11:30 in the morning, 11:30, 12, I wasn't actually aware of the time of when it happened. I was at home. Spain's power cut off and I was at home with my husband and we thought, well, maybe it's just a building. So we checked the building and then we couldn't tell, but we saw outside and other people were looking into the street. So we looked for the traffic lights. Were the traffic lights working? We couldn't tell. So we thought, well, maybe it's just the neighborhood. So we weren't that worried. We then continued going to work like normal. And then I realized while I was driving to work that all the traffic lights were cut out. There's a good phrasal verb, cut out, meaning it stopped working. So all the traffic lights were cut out. And there was traffic, like long lines of traffic. It was one big traffic jam, basically. And we had to go around the roundabouts, the redondas. We had to go around the roundabouts and go to basically all the way up to the highway meaning the motorway, and then just wait in traffic. Eventually, police came to direct the traffic, to help the traffic flow ease up a little bit, which helped. And then coming into work, I was listening to the radio, and then only afterwards listening to the radio did we hear out that there was a total blackout, a total power cut in the whole of Spain, and that everything was out of service, right? No power lines for electricity, no telephone lines for our phones, nothing. So that was a little bit scary. Eventually, when I arrived at work, right, then we were talking, it's like, oh no, it's not just Spain, it's Portugal and maybe France as well. But then the questions start, why is this happening? How long is it going to be for? And nobody has answers. Anyway, a lot of people decided to go to the shops. I went to Mercadona because I wanted bread. We had ham and cheese and other things at home, but we didn't have bread. So I wasn't sure if they were going to be open. Number one, are they going to be open? Maybe, maybe not. I thought maybe if people have money, coins, something in cash, right? Everybody uses card, majority, or their phone, right, to pay nowadays. Everything is digital banking. So I asked a friend if I could borrow some coins to just go to the Mercadona and buy some bread. And it was chaos at the Mercadona. It kind of had the feeling of, COVID, that first week of COVID, when everybody was panic buying, right? People were buying all the water. I saw people buying 20 liters of water, like 5 loaves of bread and all the cheese and all the ham. People were loading the trolleys. A trolley is like a carrito. All right. So people were loading the trolleys, not knowing how long this was going to be for. All right. And there was me in the line with a bottle of water and a loaf of bread. A loaf is like barra de pan, right? A loaf of bread and my bottle of water, just thinking, am I not panicking enough? Must I panic more? In my mind, living in the 21st century, 2025, in a first world country, I was like, this is not going to be a problem for long. Surely it will be like 12 hours. But then we started hearing rumors, right? People were gossiping, saying, no, they heard it will be 3 days. Other people were saying, no, it's going to be 6 days, right? And that's when the panic started. But I was still at work. We still had students coming in to learn English, which is absolutely fine. People need something to do to focus on when they are stressed. So students still came into the academy to learn English, and I was happy for the distraction, and I think they were as well. But because everything was out of service and we had no signal, then I was a little bit worried about what my husband was doing. So he works on the other side of town. But anyway, it turns out, good phrasal verb, it turns out, meaning the end result was that he didn't have work, and he was able to go around and buy some last minute things. So we have a barbecue. So we thought, well, if we get some charcoal is carbon. So if we got some charcoal, maybe we could just cook the meat that we have in the freezer while the freezer was off, because remember that all of our electrical things were out because of the outage, and we could at least cook some things on the barbecue, right? So he was able to make a plan. When I eventually came home with me and my bread and him and all the things that he was able to buy, we were set. We were ready. We thought that we could do this. We had candles. We had torchlights. Remember that a torchlight is like a linterna? He had a headlamp. A headlamp is like a flashlight or a torch that you put on your head, usually for camping, right? So we felt okay. Our phones weren't charged. Some people were charging their phones in their car. Some people had power banks. A power bank is like a portable battery charger. But we didn't have any of that. We weren't worried. The only thing that we were worried about is not being able to connect to people at home, right? But, we were safe, and that was the most important thing. Eventually, the electricity did come back on, as everybody knows. It's obviously in the news that it wasn't that long. It was only about 10 to 12 hours, and everybody was fine. But it is amazing to see how the general population handled the situation. Some people were panicking. I think that is the natural reaction, especially when you don't know what's going on. But if you look at social media, people were dancing in the streets and treating it as a bit of a holiday. And that just shows the resilience of people when there is an emergency and they don't know what's happening. The community comes together. All right. So I think it's important to remember that in times of instability, that we are strong enough to handle difficult situations. Obviously, there were some disasters, right? People were stuck meaning they could not move. They were stuck in trains. Some people were stuck in elevators. 5 people died because of the outage, the electricity outage. So these are some difficult things that people had to manage, but majority of the population persevered. And now the government has to answer some questions because the reasoning of what happened doesn't make sense, in my opinion. But I'm not a politician. I don't know, and I'm not an electrician. I don't know the ins and outs. Ins and outs means like the details of how things work. Anyway, so we have some really good vocabulary that has come up, and this is the perfect opportunity to talk about it. If you want to download all the information, please check out the blog. There is a blog up on the website on theway.s under the blog tab. So you just click on the tab and you will find our power cut blog, right? So let's get into some of the vocabulary. If we're talking about the basics of a power cut, meaning when we have the apagón, right? We talk about a power cut or a blackout when there's no electricity. We can also say electricity outage, right? No electricity. You could say that things were out of service, things weren't working, and that there was no Wi-Fi, no data, and no signal. If you are talking about the things that you need during an outage or a power cut, you could say that you needed some candles. You were looking for a torch or a flashlight, anything that was battery powered. For example, we had a battery powered radio, so we were hoping to hear for news on the radio until the battery died, right? So you charge your battery and then the battery dies. Then obviously we were hoping to charge our phone, but that was impossible for us personally. And when you are in an outage like this, you are supposed to unplug, meaning desenchufas some of your electrical outlets, because when the electricity comes back, you don't want there to be a surge of electricity. Surge meaning like a wave, una ola of electricity. right? If you are talking about infrastructure, right, you could say that there is a power station or a power plant, meaning like factories of electricity. Power lines or electricity cables, meaning the way that the electricity moves through the country. We also have an electrical grid. The grid meaning like squares of electricity in the country, in regions where this place has electricity, but maybe this place doesn't. So as Spain was bringing electricity back, they were doing it by grid by grid. Then some people, if you are lucky enough to have a backup generator is the machine that you can switch on when there's no electricity. For example, when I went to Mercadona, it was open with electricity. They had a backup generator. And then talking about your power suppliers, your electricity supplier, your electricity provider, meaning the company that gives you electricity. The final thing that I just want to mention is that we are, it was an interesting 12 hours, and I'm very impressed with how everyone came together to deal with the situation. So well done to everyone that stayed cool, calm, and collected. And so the last thing that I want to talk about in today's podcast is what you did during the blackout. I described my day, what I did using past simple and past continuous. Give yourself the opportunity to comment on our social media, either on Spotify or on Apple Music. Check out our Instagram and our other social media and let us know how you survived the blackout in Spain. Otherwise, guys, we'll check you next week.
Si disfrutaste de este episodio y quieres llevar tu inglés al siguiente nivel, te invitamos a descubrir nuestros cursos online en thewell.es, diseñados para mejorar tu fluidez y confianza en situaciones reales. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a transformar su aprendizaje. Visita ahora thewell.es y realiza nuestro test de nivel interactivo de manera gratuita. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen de Mid-Third cómodamente desde casa.